Welcome to Corporate Baggage, where we will help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load. We're your hosts, Whitney Siders and Catie Campbell.
For nearly 40 years, we've been coaches, consultants, and leaders inside organizations and supporting global enterprises and Fortune 500 companies to help make those organizations strong and healthy.
If there's a hot topic in the workplace, you better believe we'll be unpacking it here. Topics like return to office, performance reviews, compensation, nothing is off limits. Like, subscribe, follow us, and drop your baggage in the comments so we can unpack it together and lighten the load.
The only thing that should be in your bag is your paycheck.
Welcome back to Corporate Baggage. We are discussing one of Whitney's favorite topics, which is layoffs. We did a previous episode where we talked about corporate layoffs from the company and sort of leadership perspective. But in today's episode, we really want to talk to you about it from the employee perspective, because that's how we do things here at Corporate Baggage, where we help you unpack, repack, and help lighten the load on really tough issues around the crazy, wacky world of work. And this is a really big, hot topic. It's not new. I mean, we said, I think the statistic in the last episode was that upwards of 40% of people in their professional life have been laid off at some stage. Or if you haven't been, you could be one of the 40%. It's a very normal thing. But it seems to be a very hot button issue at the moment. You could say it's the economy. You could just say it's just the world of work is changing and the nature of work is changing. Company strategies are changing. Who knows? But at the end of the day, this really does impact people's, I would say, strength, resilience, and motivation to want to dive into their next workplace when they do experience a layoff. So we thought it was important to talk about this topic from the employee perspective so that people aren't caught unawares if this does happen to them, and they can do some things that are really healthy, proactive, professional activities to make it so that in the face of a layoff, they can be resilient and successful on the other side of it.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about how to have the right, not the right, but a proper mindset, a helpful mindset around work, and that you could be laid off, you could be let go, what that actually looks like from the organization lens, and having that mindset is going to be critical. So we're going to give you some really functional tips, some practical tips on how to complement that. But one thing I want to go back to what you said is that, you know, it's just prevalent in today's world. And I think that's also because a lot more is shared in today's world, right?
Right.
So there's a spectrum of this, but there is certainly more than there was 20, 30 years ago being shared on social media, of which, you know, most didn't exist 30 years ago. So what we're seeing, what I think a lot of the world is seeing, is conversations being had about layoffs and about the mindset and about your current state being live streamed. We've talked about, but even if it's not being live streamed, videos about I've been laid off, and sure, that's the conversation, and there's different things happening about that. But then what I want to talk about is the cringiness. I'll just call it out, the cringiness of then what follows from that. So we'll talk about the cringy and the not cringy, but the cringy that I've seen is the classic of people not understanding that the internet is forever and crying on the internet. I'm not saying you can't cry, but crying on the internet about not being chosen for a role, or going through and talking about an organization saying, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and I got to this, and I wasn't chosen. Sure, you could share that story. We tell organizations you should be prepared for those stories being shared, and that's a part of the brand and all of those things. And is that part of your personal brand that you want carried on? Because today, organizations, hiring managers are not just looking at the stack of applications they're looking at. They are talking to their friends, their network, saying, who do you have that's really good for this new role that I'm hiring for? And they're getting referrals. And that's how they're finding people.
Well, a lot of the hiring processes that are out there include a background check, which has been standard for a long time. But the background check now includes a social media check too.
Right.
Because companies are really interested in hiring people who align with their brand, especially if they are very brand conscious. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's important to know that the internet does live forever. So are you just suggesting that people don't go on the internet and talk about their layoff?
No, I think you should be able to talk about whatever you want to talk about on the internet. And at the same time, just knowing that understanding that is a representation of your brand. So just like anything else, just like you wouldn't make an emotional decision and go on the internet and talk about a fight that you just had with your significant other, I'd also advise not to go on the internet and talk about a layoff right after it happened and you're emotional about it. Now, that's your choice. If you want to do that, that's great. And knowing that, again, everything is a trade-off. There's going to be an impact of that. Knowing that, would I make that same decision knowing that hiring managers are looking at my social media? Maybe yes, maybe no, depending on what you're sharing.
It's been a very interesting trend to watch people do TikTok videos and Instagram reels and say, get ready with me while I get prepared to get laid off. And it's this whole conversation about how they think they know why they're going to get laid off. And it's the meeting that pops up on their calendar from HR and their manager, or it's just a rumbling, or sometimes the business has signaled that layoffs are coming.
Yeah.
So they've got an idea that they could be somebody who would be impacted. And then they go into all these reasons why it would be bad and it's going to impact them and all that kind of stuff. And so from a humanistic perspective, it's like, yeah, it's going to suck if you lose your job.
It's helpful to see. Yeah.
It is, because I think when you look at anything about a layoff in the news, they'll say, Intel is going to cut 20,000 jobs. Well, most people can't visualize 20,000 people unless they've ever been in a professional sports stadium. So that doesn't mean anything to them, but these individual videos
it
do.
Normalizes it,
right? Because they'll talk about the job and they'll talk about why they loved it, or their colleagues or their boss, whatever. So you start to kind of go, oh man, yeah, that sucks. And then they set up their camera on the side of their desk and they show them, and sometimes you can hear the person in the background on the other end of the Zoom call. It's usually a Zoom call, that are laying them off. And so yeah, it's awkward as all get out. It's like watching a couple break up in public or something like that. It's like, ooh, that's I don't really want to be a part of your life in that way. And it's hard to watch it because you know that this is not going to be a really positive outcome. Like 9 times out of 10, these people were right. And the internet does live forever. So now you're already showing your cards for, hey, I'm going to expose you if you do something that I don't like. And I don't know that everybody who's making videos like that is thinking about exposing them. Some of them are. Some of them are they've had it with their company, and there is a malintent. I think, moreover, people are wanting to get support. They want to, if they're just showing their human experience. But you're right. It does kind of raise questions in my mind of like, well, what else would you show? What else would you show on the internet if you come work for me? So yeah, the internet lives forever, and this has become a trend. We've also talked about this when we, in our previous episode, talked about, from the corporate side of things, we talked about how a lot of companies have just done layoffs so poorly that was a reason why some of these content creators, if you call them.
We're calling them out,
right? We're calling them out.
A good thing.
I kind of loved that.
Yeah.
Like, I love, exposing companies that are just doing bad stuff, right? And they're doing employees wrong. This, on the other hand, the layoffs could be completely warranted, as we talked about. There's lots of reasons why companies do layoffs that are completely warranted. And so it's a very odd way to transition from employment to non-employment and then try to get into re-employment.
Building your brand that way. And I think the re-employment piece is the one example, at least, that I'm thinking of, and I'll share this, which is there was this woman who was sharing, I don't believe she shared the actual layoff piece happening, but she was kind of documenting her journey to reemployment. And I've seen a bunch of those, right, in a positive way and a not positive. So positive, there's this one woman on TikTok, shout out to her. I forget her handle. We could tag it in the notes. But she's been looking for, I believe she was in tech, looking for a job for months and months and months, and built this community of people doing the same thing to lean on each other and support each other. And she was sharing her stories in a positive way. I think that was a realistic and positive way to channel that energy. And she's found community in that, of which has helped others do the same thing. On the flip side, I saw another woman talking about the interviews she was going on, and she got to this point where she, I think, was at a point where she thought she was going to get this job. It didn't, and it was strung along. Again, not poor on her part, bad on the company's part, had a bad candidate experience, but she got online and was very upset and talking about it, even to the point of the body language was like crossing my arms and like a very much like, they didn't pick me and I don't know what I'm doing wrong and I don't know what I could do and this is ridiculous, and very much like pointing blame at everyone else but herself. And if I'm an employer and I see that for anything else that she's applying for, that is an immediate no. Whether you're expressing your opinion or not, that tells me that anything that goes wrong in the organization, that you can, that's how your reaction is going to be.
You're going to run to the internet to help adjudicate.
Or just that is how you're going to show up with others, with your peers.
Right.
And that is, and again, this is going to be based on the organization, but I'd imagine that most values align with being solution focused, moving forward, being collaborative, like
exactly
overarching. That's what you're looking for. And so that is what we're saying is that branding, and clearly that's her brand that she chose. But I don't think that that's the brand that she wants to choose.
Absolutely
I would
not.
guess. So being mindful of that in the moment, not making a poor decision that is going to impact your hunt. I'd be curious to go back and see if she's landed anywhere.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, so when we were doing prep for this show, we started with the question, like, what should you do if you get laid off? And very quickly, we stopped ourselves and went, whoa, wait a minute.
It starts way before then.
Then. Because, okay, if the statistic is true that 40% of us are going to experience a layoff.
Have you been laid off ever?
Yes. Yeah.
I have too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we survived.
Yeah.
Whitney, we survived.
It was actually the best thing that's ever happened to me. In the moment, it was devastating.
Right.
And there was like many things, I believe, there was a silver lining. It was the best thing that ever happened.
The next role that I got really helped the trajectory of the rest of my career. And I didn't even know that was what it was going to be. It really it helped me level up in all sorts of ways.
And I've heard that so many times.
Right.
From people.
It was a blessing in disguise. But there were things that I did prior to that layoff, and we were talking about this during our prep for the show, that made it so that the transition into the next role wasn't very difficult. You got to do some licking of the wounds a little bit because it doesn't feel good to not be picked at all, ever. But the things that I think I did in the white space before a layoff ever happened was really the key to landing the next right role. So we quickly pivoted from, let's not talk about what do you do when you get laid off. Let's talk about how do you prepare for what could be the inevitable, so that if it does come to pass that you are laid off, then you're ready to be able to hit the ground running. So we made a list of like a handful of things that you should do. And the first one that I want to highlight, and I want to give a shout out to my dad, Roger Campbell, who wrote a book and talked about this. And we'll link his book in the show notes because it's called Make Yourself Indispensable. He and a business partner of his wrote this years ago. And one of the things that he wrote about in the book, but he's taught us, me and my siblings, from the time that we started as professionals, was you have a resume when you get into the workforce, right? And he would say you need to update your resume on a consistent basis. So monthly, quarterly, but multiple times a year. And it's not because you're looking for a job, but because there are other opportunities that come up where people say, hey, do you have a resume? Do you have a bio? Do you have a resume? That comes up when I get asked to go and speak at conferences or for professional associations. Sometimes when I get asked to go in and coach or consult in an organization, they'll want a formal resume. So I have one, but I've had one that was updated all the time. I never had to worry about, oh my gosh, I have to start a resume from scratch. And what I was updating it with was a new accomplishment, a new goal that I hit when I got promoted, so that if you decide, hey, I want to leave the company I'm at and go apply for a new job, you don't have to sit there on a Saturday afternoon and go, what did I accomplish in the last 4 years at this job? It's hard to remember that. And if you're lucky, you have it documented in the performance management system somewhere. But he always said, have the resume updated on a consistent basis. You never know when you're going to need it. So if you do get laid off, you already have that handy. If you are listening and you're like, crumbs, I haven't done that in years, or I haven't done that since I started my last job. Fortunately, there are a ton of people that can help you to do that. There are resume writers everywhere. You can find like external consultants that'll help you do that on Upwork and Fiverr and places like that. They can really zhuzh it up for you, so it doesn't have to be this like awful task. But first and foremost, you should always have a current resume.
Yes. That's number one tip.
Yeah.
I think then another thing that goes along with that is keeping your relationships fresh, which should always be doing for multiple reasons. Oftentimes that comes along with the role that you might be in. If it doesn't, then this might feel a little bit more foreign. Like, so this might be a part of your day-to-day already, and it might not. So it might be a little bit of a leap. But if you're keeping your network relationships fresh, what that doesn't mean, because sometimes this can feel a little daunting, is reaching out and connecting with people like every week or every month. I keep in touch with people that I maybe will reach out to every couple months. And that's fine. Everything's, life is happening, work is happening, but we still have this relationship that if something happened or if I needed a favor, it wouldn't feel odd that I was reaching out of the blue.
Right.
It wouldn't have been years. And there are people that it would have been, that it will be years. And if I reach out, that also wouldn't be odd because you're also commenting, liking, engaging on their posts. I'll share a story. There's this woman that I've known for almost 15 years in the community. We had crossed paths professionally. And although we weren't working closely together, we weren't deep friends, we were connected. And she was always a cheerleader on my LinkedIn posts. I was always a cheerleader on her LinkedIn posts. So we engaged that way. And we all know, we kind of feel like we know what's going on in people's lives because of social media in a different way. And she was laid off, reached out, we had coffee. I connected her to a client of mine, and she now has a job. She could have been interviewing for months later, but she was doing that not just with me, with multiple people to land in her next spot. And so I think that's a prime example of not conflating, I need to have this relationship management system where I'm meeting with people all the time. No, engage with people on social media, send out messages, figure out who your connectors are, that they might not get you a job, but they might know someone who could.
That's right. And you said that role that she got wasn't even a role that was a posted role. So she got a job that
she couldn't have even applied for it.
Right.
It was a newly created role.
So, I know that a lot of people get the ick around networking. And I understand that too. I'm an extrovert and I don't love formal networking programs and that sort of thing. I love meeting new people and making connections. So that's kind of how I see it. But what you're talking about is really just ongoing, healthy relationships. It makes it a lot easier when someone says, I'm looking for my next thing. And you're not like, I haven't talked to you in 7 years. Right. You haven't engaged with me for 7 years. Now I have to sit there. You're almost a stranger and we have to start all over again. I'm still going to meet with them. I'm still going to help them out. But it does make it a lot harder. I saw a post this morning on LinkedIn. It was a guy I don't know, but he's connected to somebody in my network. And he was talking about how he was laid off months ago and he's been applying for hundreds of jobs. And I know you have an opinion about that. He's been applying for hundreds of jobs. He's gotten nothing, very few interviews, not getting to the end round. And one of the things that he said in his post, it was like this one, almost a throwaway line that said, I know I should be reaching out to my network more, but I really haven't done that. And I thought,
because why? He used a word that we talked about.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Thank you. That's why I love you. Because he's embarrassed that he got laid off.
Embarrassed.
And so there's a part of me that my heart goes out to him too.
Yeah,
because did I love when I got laid off? No. Did I really want to tell everybody? No. And then at the same time, LinkedIn has done a wonderful job at normalizing people saying, I'm open to work. I've got availability. And whether that's in a freelance kind of space or just I want a second side gig or I want a full-time job, they've kind of normalized it's okay to broadcast and talk about that. But I still think that most people are in an old school mindset that it's embarrassing or not okay when you get laid off. Sometimes you are just it's a circumstantial thing and it's not about you. It's about the company and business decisions that they made.
Wrong time type of thing.
Right. So
sometimes
he was embarrassed to reach out to his network, but you and I also got into a lengthy conversation about this where I believe, and I think you believe, that the world of work is going to continue to be relationship-based, meaning the companies, yes, they will post for jobs when they're doing sort of mass hirings or they're hiring for a non-specific role, but the majority of hires don't come that way, especially if you've been in the workforce for many years.
Right.
So people who have been laid off and they've been in the workforce for 10, 15, 20 years and they can't find a job, really concerns me. And the number one thing I think of is like this gentleman not activating his network because he's embarrassed, or two, not activating your network more generally on the regular just to find out how people are doing or to support them, be a cheerleader, etc.
Yeah. Similarly, you made me think of another post I saw, actually someone in my network, where he was saying, applying for a bunch of jobs, can't get any interviews, or I'm getting the interviews and they're not going anywhere. Similar story. And what he was getting back was that was very credentialed, had even owned a business and then sold it, and he was overqualified and was like willing to do work at different levels, and they were like, and organizations weren't having it. So again, how do you close that gap? And my strong opinion on that is back to what you were saying, is you're not hitting the easy apply button on LinkedIn to 100, because I would comment on that guy's post and say, that's why you're not getting a job, is you're wasting your time.
Right.
Like, sure, spray and pray, like, figure it out. Like, yeah, you're throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, maybe you'll get one, but the chances are low. Because like you said, people are hiring from their connected, especially at the higher level roles.
Right.
Right? Now, organizations, rightfully so, are posting the jobs because they're opening it up to everyone, as they should. And you have to be connected in some way. And that doesn't mean that you have to know someone in the inside.
No, you don't. And the person that you worked with that got hired at this company, she didn't know about that other company where her new employer, like it's sort of like a Kevin Bacon exercise, right? But it starts with, you've got to be able to put yourself out there and talk to people. So the other piece of it too that I think discussed earlier was, it's not just then coming up to Whitney and saying, hey, I've been laid off, can you help me find a job, or who can you introduce me to? That's table stakes. You absolutely need to do that. But ongoing, you should be working with mentors. You should have a mentor or two, maybe somebody who's outside of your department that's inside your company, but really outside mentors that can help you close gaps on other parts of your professional development, that could be giving you advice about other ways to level up your career or ready yourself for the next role, which may not be in the company where you work.
Right.
So before a layoff ever happens, you should be talking about your professional life and figuring out if you really do want to continue to be employable and employed, or continue to move up in an organization or move up in a level. You've got to work with mentors who can help you learn the skills or develop some capabilities that you don't currently have professionally.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to get tactical on one piece we said around you don't need to know someone on the inside. So you might be thinking, if you're listening to this as an employee, well, you just said that I need to be able to be connected, but what do I do if I don't know someone that works at that business? So one, you can look at people's connections, most people's profiles. Not all, I know that on LinkedIn, but you could look at people's connections and see if any of your network connections are connected to anyone at that company and ask for an introduction. That's a great way. That's a smooth, warm connection. And at the bare minimum, you find out who the hiring manager is and you're reaching out directly to them or seeing if you have any mutual connections. Again, seeing if you can get in that way. Because the last way that you're going to get seen, the last pile that they're looking at, is the stack of piles that is most of the time getting filtered through an AI hiring system anyway. So you might not even get looked at.
So it is a numbers game. And everybody that I've been paying attention to who's been posting about being laid off and their challenges around finding new employment will say that to you. Like, I've applied for 200 jobs. It's like, okay, but have you reached out to 200 different people at those companies to be able to make a human-to-human connection? Because for every job posting that's out there, a lot of them, you get hundreds, if not thousands of resumes per role. And it doesn't have to be a highly specialized role. It could be an entry-level role. I mean, these recruiters and these HR shops are really struggling with the volume. Right. So it is a numbers game, but you are trying to reduce the numbers for yourself by actually activating your network.
So those are the key things, those two things, the preparing your resume, preparing your network. Two things you could do leading up to just always being prepared,
right,
in general. So during, you get laid off, we talked about that already, how to really show up, think about, what that brand looks like, your personal brand, what that needs to be representative of. And then it happens after. We talked a lot about that in prep for the show too, which was, okay, we both said, like, yes, it was devastating. The layoff I was a part of, I definitely cried. I'm not saying don't have emotion. I cried. I had emotion. It was a meaningful role to me. And I slept on it, took a couple of days, picked myself back up, and then went right back at it. And so I'm not saying that everyone's going to grieve differently, because it is a little bit of a grieving process.
That's right.
So go about your process, and the awareness around that, I think, is important. Just knowing that it is going to be a part of a grieving process. You're going to have emotion around it, but having a preparedness and a plan around it will also help you then be able to propel yourself forward.
And if you're having conversations with your mentor, if you're having conversations with friends, colleagues, neighbors, people in your professional network about what do you think is next for you? Again, this is pre-layoff. When you go to them and say, you know what, I was reading the market courses. It's time because I got laid off. Oh my God, oh, so bummed. Yep, it sucks. Okay, so here's what I'm really looking for now. You're picking up the same conversation that you've had with them. This is somebody who already knows and is aligned to what your goals are and what you really want for yourself in your career. So if you're laying the groundwork far in advance of a layoff happening, it doesn't become an embarrassing conversation. Is it unfortunate? Yeah. But the picking yourself up is easier because you've already started like running the strategy. You're already running the play before the play needs to start. Right. It's like having a to-go kit, or like, a go bag or something like that for an emergency.
A little bit,
yeah. It's like there's a process that you could be following, and there's no reason why people could or need to be like left in the dark or feel all alone or feel like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? That you've already laid the groundwork and had the resources ready. So, really the recommendation here is if you're not in a position where you've been laid off recently, great. If you've never been laid off, awesome. I'm really happy for you. If you're listening to this and you have been laid off and you're like, oh, Catie, Whitney, I didn't do those things before. It's totally fine. Yeah. You can just start doing them now and it become the habits and practices that you do. If you're listening to this and you're like, wow, my spouse or my partner or my friend or somebody should be doing this, share this podcast and really kind of clue them in on getting yourself ready for what could be the inevitable. But if for nothing else, even if you never get laid off, you're going to know somebody in your life who will. So encouraging them to put these practices into place. And then if you never get laid off, but you still want to maybe move around and try different companies and try different things, and you need to do that, you're going to be ready to do it because you'll have a resume ready, you'll have your network activated, you'll have mentors who are ready to guide and support you, and it really will be an easier transition for you out of one organization into another because you've been doing the work all along.
I love that fine point on those. And there's one thing I want to put in here that we haven't really talked about with layoffs. But if let's say you're not laid off, but you're looking for your next thing or you're ready to leave and you don't know what that looks like. I think in connected what you're saying around mentors and coaches being outside of your organization, if you're thinking, I might be seeing a layoff coming, or I'm not really feeling like this is the right place for me, but I don't really know what is next. We're off. I think we both do. You tell me what you have, but I have a couple coaching slots for the year open.
I have a few.
A couple that we could fill. So if you're thinking, I don't really know where to start, reach out to us. We could talk through that, help you with what your next step is. Not necessarily from the resume perspective. That's not our bread and butter.
Not our jam.
But if you want to figure out what my next move is, what really lights me up, reach out to us. We can help you with that. So if you're going through a layoff, we feel for you. If you're not, you have some tips to prepare yourself, but you got this.
And if you post about it on the internet,
we'll find you.
Really think hard about what you post.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening today. If you have some corporate baggage you want to unpack or something you're taking away from the conversation, drop it in the comments.
Please find our social links in the description, and we'd love it if you could comment, subscribe, and share this with someone that you think it could help too.